Thank you, Lord, for the message you've put inside of Dell. Thank you for his willingness, his obedience. I ask that you give him clarity, that you give him revelation, and that you open up our eyes and ears, physically and spiritually, to hear what he has to say. And that, Lord, you would speak through him, and that you would touch every person today, and that they would come away knowing more about who you are, and who that they can be in your name. And challenge us today, Lord, and send us out with your encouragement. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you. So young people, you can leave. So I know you're desperate to hear me preach. Oh, it's Dale preaching. It means we have to stay. Doesn't mean you have to stay for once. Charlie is taking you out, so don't forget we are having pizza at our house later. So that will happen. They'll be a bit more excited about that, I suspect. So we're going to do a 5-week book series on the books of Kings, 1 and 2 Kings, couple of books of the Bible. Now, if you're not sure, if you're not where, you don't know, you haven't got any part of the Bible that you're currently reading, you don't know where to go, I just think, right, okay, in these next few weeks, 1 and 2 Kings will be a good place to be. Now, they're not easy books. They're not like joyous books a lot of the time, and we're going to see that. And there's quite a lot in there. And so what we're going to do is, because we're only spending 5 weeks, and there's like 45, 50 chapters or whatever across the 2 books. We didn't want to spend 50 weeks in the book of Kings. We didn't think anyone would thank us for that. And so we're only going to touch on like 5 different parts of that series. So what we're going to do is an idea that I sort of regret now, but we did it anyway, is that we've got like a 2-minute video each week at the start of this, just to tell us where we're going to be at in the story, because obviously we're going to just kind of skip large bits. So if you watch the screen, there will be a video explaining where we are this week.
This is the kingdom. This is the kingdom. Everybody's building empires, building walls high in the name of glory. Everybody's hanging high wires. It's a fine line. It's an age-old story. The first will be last, and the last will be kings. The small will be great.
The book of Kings takes us through a period from about 900 BC for about the next 300 years. Now, this is the time where Israel actually had a set of kings. Now, God had never wanted them to have a king, saying that he would be their king. And he said that if you have a king, this king's going to exploit you, he's going to take your stuff, they're going to lead you into war. You don't want a king. But eventually, they get kings. And what's happened is we've seen Saul, who was the first king, come and go. But we really think of David as the major king. David's been the big, famous guy. And there's a prophecy that goes to David that someone from his line will always have the throne and will always be king. And so we're going to pick up the story with Solomon. Solomon's David's son, who's just taken the throne. And this is going to be a time of great wealth and great prosperity. But as we go through the book of Kings, we're going to see that there's also great times of hardship, that the nation falls away. That sometimes there's a good king. And when there's a good king, the nation follows him, but then that king will die and the nation fall away. And it's a time where there's incredible highs and lows. And at the end of the book, we will see a nation in ruins. We'll see a temple that's been destroyed. We'll see the nation in captivity. And it looks like all hope has gone. But what we need to remember is that after our King series, we're going to go into a series on Easter. And we're going to see that there's another king to come. A king who will not die. And it is in that king that we place our hope.
This is the kingdom. Heaven coming down.
So that's what we're going to do. This all seems very good till you have to watch yourself on video. Then it seems like the worst idea in the world. And so, so for those of you who don't know me, my name's Del. I'm married to the American lady who's been given the notice, is Lindsay. And so I'm married an American, which is something to do, isn't it? And so I get asked a few questions in America often when I go. And some of them you expect, some of them you don't. The one I didn't expect was someone asked Lindsay, what language does Del's parents speak? And she went, I mean, English, like definitely English. She was like, oh, okay, so where are they from? And she was like, England, they speak English in England. She was like, oh, okay, but where's Del from then? And she was like, England. And it was like, oh, I thought English was like his second language. And so that's they're not used to that accent. They're used to the Hugh Grant accent. Turns out Northern doesn't play that well in America. So I think I'm from somewhere else, clearly. So I wasn't ready for that. The one I am always ready for is, have you met the Queen? That's the one I'm always ready for. It happens a lot. The first time I met Lindsay's friends, girl called Sarah, who's a little out of the box. She asked me that question. I was ready to lie. I'd talked with my young people at this church here. I'm the youth pastor. I don't just have a bunch of young people running around. And so, I said, right, I'm going to have a lie ready. So if someone asks me, I'm going to tell them that we all get given, when we hit 35, we all get given like an OBE, unless we've been to jail or something. I'll flesh that out. And I was like, so I had this ceremony so I was ready. And then this woman, one of her friends, it was the first time I met him, said, so have you met the Queen? I was like, now's my moment. And like a coward, I went, no, I haven't met the Queen. I just thought, the first impression, you imagine a first impression of, that your boyfriend, Lindsay, he's a liar, isn't he? Yeah, it's not ideal, that. I was trying to keep up the English gentleman. But what you've seen in that video is that I took Lindsay to Windsor Castle, not solely because we're speaking on kings, but largely because I want to go method acting. Those of you who don't know what method acting is, it's where you really get into the role. And if we're going to do kings, we're going to go to a castle, right? We went to Windsor Castle. The Queen was in. The flag was flying. We kind of called up a little bit like, hello, Queen, are you in? She didn't respond, so that's okay. I'm not upset at her too much. So we're going to go method and get deep into it. And there's an actor who's famous for method acting, Daniel Day-Lewis, and we'll get into the title in a second. And Daniel Day-Lewis has won 3 Oscars for Best Actor. I was like the only guy who's done this. And he is method. And what that means is when he's doing a role, he gets so into the character that it's insane. And when he was in Last of the Mohicans in 92, he would only eat food that he himself had killed and skinned. I mean, that's already too far, isn't it? And so that is what he was like in 92. And that he didn't think, that's a bit intense, I'll stop there. He carried on as he did every film. When he was Abraham Lincoln, everybody had to call him Mr. President for the entire months on set. You couldn't, when you're not filming, you couldn't go, hey, Daniel, you'd be like, Mr. President. He would write the crew little notes and sign them Abe. Like he was Lincoln for like 2 months. It gets more intense. He played a character in a wheelchair in a film called My Left Foot who had cerebral palsy. He spent 8 weeks in a cerebral palsy clinic as part of the role. And in the months that he was filming, he never once left that wheelchair. People had to carry him from place to place. People had to feed him every meal with a spoon. He literally would not do that. He would not stop. He would not change that. And then the final one, the other one that he's won an Oscar for, Gangs of New York, he got pneumonia because he refused to wear a coat between scenes because the character wouldn't have worn a coat even though it was cold, and got pneumonia. So Daniel Day-Lewis is method. He is he is deep. And we are going to see that Solomon is a guy that I think is method and he's deep, because we're going to go through a timeline of Solomon in a second. But Solomon, as well as being a king, writes a couple of books in the Bible. And one of these is quite a difficult book called Ecclesiastes, and we're going to base our preach in that kind of a chapter of that, which we rarely do. And we're going to see that Solomon is going method into the pursuit of wisdom. He's not just kind of going, I'm just going to sit and do some wise thoughts. Solomon really pursues meaning. He's going, I'm going to find where the meaning is in life. And he goes at it. He throws himself full in. He is like Daniel Day-Lewis squared. And so we're going to see that's what we're going to look at. And we're going to call this power struggle, of how Solomon kind of struggles maybe with some of the elements of power, how he sees kind of people coming against him, how he struggles with being in charge, how he sees the futility of struggle, those kind of things. And so Solomon's taken over as king, but really after a bit of a power struggle with his brother who wanted to be king. And we see that in our world. We know that politics is filled with power struggles. And so me and Lindsay watched Darkest Hour last night, a Churchill movie. And even then, you have these people behind the scenes who are just plotting to become prime minister themselves. Forget the fact that the country's at war. Forget the fact that there's a problem. It's just, right, if you do this, then you resign, then I can do this. And it's just, that's the way the world works, right? And that's how Solomon has taken over. And God has said that he doesn't want people to have kings because he knows this is in the heart of men. That actually what we want sometimes is we want it our way. We want to be in charge and we want it to go the way that we want it. And so If we look at the story of Solomon, we're going to come back to this again and again throughout the 30 minutes or so. And we'll see that he does a lot of stuff. So there's 10 chapters worth of stuff. We can't cover that today. We're going to cover it in 30 minutes. So he became king. He asked God for wisdom. Then he builds the temple. He's the guy who builds a temple that David had never been able to do. He builds his own palace, which we'll get into, and that took him twice as long as building the temple because it was fancy. He gained huge riches. We're going to get into his riches. There's a little bit of maths for some of you geeks out there. Don't you worry. I did some maths for us. What kind of preacher doesn't have some good maths? He had 700 wives. Too many. Let's be honest, that's too many. And so that's going to cause problems. We're going to see that. He worshipped other gods. And then ultimately, the kingdom falls apart and it splits. That is a very active life. And so in the middle of this kind of thing, like the kingdom is as good as it's ever been. There's riches, there's wealth, there's strength, there's power. But at the end of the life, it all falls apart. And that's the timeline of Solomon. And so the first thing we see of Solomon is that he asks for wisdom. Okay, he asks God for wisdom right at the start when he takes over. And in 1 Kings 3, he says, look, before this, in verses 7 to 9, he says, God, I'm not worthy to be king. Will you just help me to judge with discernment and govern wisely? And it said, the Lord was pleased Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, since you've asked for this and not long life or wealth for yourself, nor have you asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you've asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there be. And that is what we're going to be looking at here. We're going to look at this guy who goes full on method about the pursuit of wisdom and what it means and so on. And so we're going to see that this is the story that we're going to see. So we're going to be looking at Ecclesiastes 2. And as he's talking about meaning and wisdom and trying to find things, we're going to see that there's a few struggles that we see comes up with about life. And the first one is never having enough. And we're going to see that Solomon lived a rock star life. If he wasn't just saying, I'm going to find some meaning in some stuff. He was like, all right, if there's meaning in stuff, I'll find it. He is living it big. He is not just kind of going, I'm just going to go to a party. I was chatting to Lindsay about her best ever New Year's Eve recently, and it was not one with me, which, it's not the right answer. We are newlyweds. The right answer should have been, we've had 2 New Year's Eves together, and they have been the most special times. She was like, no, went to a party. This guy had a pool. It went to midnight. We all jumped in our clothes, carried on the party. Wonderful time. I was like, all right, okay. Well, Lindsay's coming to Grimsby for this New Year, so be ready. And just be ready. She'll be dodging bullets. And so, so the first thing we're going to see as we look at that is never having enough. So Ecclesiastes 2, 1 to 11 is where we're going to spend our time. And so this is Solomon writing, and he says, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. He is Daniel Day-Lewis in this thing. I am going to test pleasure to see what's good. I'm going to go for everything I can find. But that proved to be meaningless. Then we have a little bit where I would disagree with Solomon to a touch. Laughter, I said, is madness. Oh, cheer up, Solomon. Laughter is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly. My mind still guided me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. And those 3 pools, Solomon's pools that he built just for the watering of his trees. And somebody has suggested that maybe for the bathing of his 700 wives. I suppose you can't just put them in a shower. You got a lot of them. Who knows? And so he builds these things that are still there now, this massive bit of land. I bought male and female slaves and other slaves who were born in my house. We'll come back to that. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired male and female singers. No need to get music. No need for a CD or Spotify. I'm just going to get the singers. And a harem as well, the delights of a man's heart. I became far greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. You're not kidding, mate. 700 wives. I refused my heart, no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. And then, yet, when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless. A chasing after the wind, nothing was gained under the sun. And it's a difficult book, Ecclesiastes, because he says everything is meaningless a lot. He's like the opposite of the guy in the Lego movie. He goes, everything is awesome. You just imagine Solomon going, everything is meaningless. Just stop it all. Give up. And so you can get a bit depressed, but actually, he's not. I don't think he's depressed. I think he's going, right, I am going to pursue every way to find meaning outside of God. I'm going to find that it doesn't exist. It just isn't there. And he's really run at everything, and he's gone there. He's not just the kind of richest guy with the biggest parties. He's so much above all that. This would be the menu of one of his daily menu from 1 Kings 4. So yeah, the young people are not having this for dinner today. 10 ox, 20 cows, 100 sheep and goats, and then no numbers, but deer, gazelles, roebucks, and some choice fowl. Just the choice ones. And so one day, that's 1 day's worth of food. Like, we went to the south once, and Toby Prest ate 6,500 calories. He would enjoy a Solomon party. He would get involved. But that is the kind of thing, if you were hanging with Solomon, you would have. And so he does all this kind of crazy building projects, and he gains incredible riches. Now, to show how rich he was, 1 Kings 10 says, the weight of the gold he received yearly was 666 talents, not including the revenues from merchants and traders and all the Arabian kings and governors of the territories. There's the maths. Here we go. Right. And so 666 talents conservatively is about 18,000 kilos of gold. Today's price of a kilo of gold is £47,000 per kilo. That is saying every year he's rolling in, just for people giving him gold, 852 million. That's all right for a year's work, and so, or a year sitting on a throne eating oxen. $1.4 trillion. There we go. Solomon, he's not just rich. He's not just like, I'm just going to get myself a nice house. He is richer than rich. Like, this is the man who's gone above and beyond the boundaries. And yet, at the end, in Ecclesiastes 5, he says this: whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless. And then there's another king that we're going to really touch on a lot as we get towards the end of this. And Jesus says this. He says, don't store up yourselves treasure on earth, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where moth and rust don't destroy and thieves don't break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And Solomon knows that their value cannot be found in wealth. And he knows because he's got more than you've got. He just has. I was reading a thing this week, and it said, Solomon was better than you in every way. I was like, all right. I was like, all right, mate. Who's calling me out there? And he said he had more stuff than you. He had more money than you. He's definitely wiser than you. I was like, yeah, well, you worship false gods. And it's just like, it's something in me. I was like, wanted to say, well, I'll show you how I'm better than Solomon. And it's just like, oh, man, I'm missing the point. And he's like, he was better in many, many, many ways. And he said it's worth nothing. It is worth nothing. Because outside of God, there is no meaning. And so he's not just kind of doing this because he's thinking, I don't know what else to do. He's saying, what is the point of life? And he's saying, actually, there is no point in life when we take it away from God. And it's that top thing there. Whoever loves money never has enough. And I know so many of us would say, we don't love money. But if I said, right, show of hands now, who's got enough? Who just reckons, I don't need any more money. I'm done with money. I've completed it, right? Not many of us. You know, a couple of people. But many of us go, do you want a bit more money? Yeah, all right. I'll take a bit more money, right? Is my house fine? It's fine. Would you like a bit more on your house? Yeah. I want to extend my house just so that the church don't stop. Just so they stop storing stuff in my house. That would be nice. But then if we build another room, what's going to happen is young people are going to be there all the time, eating all our food. And so there's a problem. And so there's never enough. It's never enough. And this week, I took Lindsay to the south because the south's nice. But what happened in the south is we parked in a service station and someone broke into our car and nicked our stuff. And so someone just nicked our bags. And it was rubbish because, we see these words from Jesus. We're thinking, look, this isn't my treasure. But it's horrible, isn't it? It's just horrible to know someone's gone in and just taken all your stuff. And Lindsay has nice stuff. Mine, it was just me dirty pants from the day. So, it's on them. They were looking for good stuff. They did not get the good stuff. And so they would have been disappointed. But there is this kind of thing of like, oh, but that's mine. I don't like it. It's mine. And we don't want that to happen. And when we're looking at the stuff, we can get dissatisfied. I have a friend called Swift, and he said one of his favorite websites is Rightmove, which I think is weird. And I was like, why is that one of your favorite websites? Are you looking to move house? And he was like, not really. I said, your house is great, Swift. And it's a real hassle for him to move house because he's in a wheelchair and it's been really difficult and he had to kit all of his house out. So he's not like a guy that can just move easily. And I was like, okay, do you want to move house? And he was like, no. But he said, but what I do is every now and then I find a house and I'll send it to Jenna and then we'll maybe doing it. And what's going to happen is he's going to move house. Because the more he looks at houses, the more he'll be like, I think that's a little better. And before long, he's not going to be satisfied in his house and he's going to move. He doesn't even want to move. But what he's doing is he's putting something out there to make him unsatisfied. And we can all do that in life in so many different ways. Think, actually, I'm all right with what I've got, but if I just could move to a better house, if I could just have that better job, if I could just not have that person working for me, if I could just live in that city, if I could just solve this one more thing, then I could be satisfied. And Solomon's done it all. He's tried to get all the satisfaction. He's saying it's not there. It's not there. And we know that when circumstances change, that can help our lives. I understand that. But there is something we need to know what it is to know God in the midst of just trial and difficulty. We've got to know him there. Like some of the times I've been closest to God have been when life has been rubbish. It doesn't equate to me that when life is easy, things with God are good. That's not always my pattern. Sometimes when life is easy, I just think, I don't really need God, right? Life is fine. And then you realize that actually there's this kind of missing thing in you, like, I'm just not who I want to be. Why? Because I'm away from God. Things might be easy, work might be good, this might be good, that might be good. It's not who I want to be. I want meaning, and I want to be close to him. And so it's not about how well the stuff is going. The second thing that we see in here from Solomon is that we can make ourselves the hero. And so when you're a kid, obviously, for some of us, our parents are the heroes. This is Silvino. I know I was a bit younger back there. There was a little bit of hair, not much, a little bit of hair. I put a picture up in my class this week about, I was explaining about pizza because, that's at least 10% of anything I teach is pizza. So I was talking about pizza and I said, if you eat too much pizza, you get like this. And I put a little picture of myself, 5 stone heavier up. 300 people laughed in my face because people are mean. Some of my students took pictures dead to me. That's what they are. And so I was like, don't take pictures. What's that? Anyway, what I'm going to tell you is my dad's a liar. And so my dad is, when you're a kid, your dad's a hero, right? That old man told me he played for Yorkshire Cricket Club. Now, though, if you know anything about cricket, Joe Root, England captain, plays for Yorkshire, right? So Yorkshire is like a big professional team. That's like if you're a professional footballer saying, I play for Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea. He's gone big. So I went to school telling all my mates my dad played for Yorkshire when he was young. Because bearing in mind, my dad's like 100 years old, right? And so therefore, he could have played for Yorkshire. I don't know, there was wars on and stuff. So I imagine he would have looked like this. This will be my dad playing cricket for Yorkshire. And I know you're thinking he would have looked young. He's never looked young. He's always looked like that, I promise you. So I went to school telling everybody, play for Yorkshire. All my mates were like, of course he didn't. Of course he didn't. They'll think about it. You live in a terraced house in Grimsby. He didn't play for... I was like, he did. So I backed him. A couple of months later, I'm chatting to him, and I bring it up. None of my mates believe you play for Yorkshire. I didn't play for Yorkshire. It all started to unravel right there. I was like, what? He said, I played for Yorkshire Electricity Board in Grimsby Cricket Division 6. Well, that's not what you told me, is it, Dad? I didn't go into school saying my dad used to play local cricket in Division 6. That's not a heroic thing. And so my dad is a liar. And so anyway, Ecclesiastes, so we can make ourselves the hero or we can put our hope in other people. And we're going to see in the King series that a lot of people, they put their hope in the king that was on the throne at that moment. And the problem with that is that king isn't perfect and that king's going to die. And that's what happens when you read the book of Kings. It's so up and down in so many ways. You think, if there's a good king, we'll trust in that king. But that only lasts for so long because these kings are fallible, they're not perfect. And Ecclesiastes 2, 9 to 11, I know we've read these earlier, but just zeroing in on these verses, Solomon says, I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in my labor, and this is reward. And yet, when I surveyed it, everything was meaningless. He was the greatest. He's the biggest. He's out there. He's the greatest. And so we know he's asked God for wisdom. He's become this kind of greatest king. No one wiser. If you Google who's the wisest person ever, King Solomon, number one. And if you're top of Google, you know it's the big deal. You know, if you Google Adam Della, there's an Australian guy who comes first, and we just have to take him out. And so King Solomon's the wisest person ever. So he is there. If you Google that, it comes up. He has made it. And we know that knowledge and wisdom are not the same. So knowledge, we know, is knowing tomatoes are fruit. We all know tomatoes are fruit. Very good. When you're young, it feels like a real good piece of knowledge. Tomatoes are fruit. Oh, I know something my friends don't know. Wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. Of course, if someone does that, then they want the world to burn. And so Solomon isn't just there like with loads of information. That wasn't what wisdom was for. It was to govern justly. And wisdom and knowledge are different. I am taking Lindsay to a pub quiz with my students this week, and I'm hoping that her knowledge will come in handy for American things. But sometimes she doesn't know much about England because she's new. And so she bought some deodorant the other day, which is a roll-on stick of deodorant. They don't exist in America. It freaked her right out. She's like, why am I wet? Why are my armpits wet? She's like, I don't know what to do. I rubbed it and I started lathering up and now I'm covered in wet. And I was like, I've enjoyed this greatly. Thank you, I'm preaching on Sunday. And so like, she doesn't have the knowledge of England, but she has wisdom. That didn't work, but it was worth it. And so he's got wisdom, but he's not the hero. Solomon's not the hero. And as long as we think he's the big guy, we're in trouble. We went to see Prince of Egypt in London this week, and it's the musical on the movie Prince of Egypt, which is based on Moses. And I tell you, don't see it. I came out fuming, just fuming, because they could not make Moses more of a hero, and they borderline make Pharaoh a hero. And the villain is bizarrely God. Now, I've read the story. I don't know how they've got there. At one point, Moses is apologizing for what God did. And at one point, he's offering to lay down his life for the sins of God. And I was like, what on earth? But you know what? In 2020, what's going to play? You can't have God as the hero, right? It's just a bit weird. We can't have a musical in London if God's the hero. We need to tweak that somehow. Let's make Moses the hero. We can get behind a historical figure being the hero, right? And that is the culture that we live in, where we're happy to put people as hero. You start saying God is hero and God is king, people are getting a bit, I'm not sure about that. And it was weird, and it was a real reminder of how easy it is to put hope in other things, how easy it is to kind of go, well, if I can make somebody else the hero, they're great, they're wise, they will lead me well. And that is what we'll see. And so that is a problem that we can have with ourselves, but we can apply it to other people. And believe it or not, you are not the hero of your own story. Like, your life is not about you and you making it work and you coming good. Our lives matter when we lay them down and we say, God, will you make them into something? Because if I do it myself, I just can't do anything. It's rubbish. I'm never going to get there. But when we realize that we're not the hero and that God is the hero, actually then things start to change. The third thing we see is Solomon worrying about the legacy. Now, you might think, well, what about legacy? None of us are in the line to the throne. Somebody in this room, now, if you know who it is, don't shout it out, because there's a big reveal at the end, and you'll ruin at least 5 slides of effort here. Somebody in this room is in line to the throne. Now, I want you to look around and think, who's the most royal looking here? And I think we're all going to be like, well, is it Dougal, maybe? No, it's Andy Wright, he's a bit clean cut. No. Is it Gemma? She's from the south, so, they're posh down there, right? And so we're going to see, just to kind of go all the way back, I'm going to skip these. That goes to William the Conqueror. All right, that's what you'll see there I've got a little pointer, but it doesn't really show very well. William the Conqueror is left King Henry I. That's as far back. If we skip left from there, King Henry I goes to some more Henrys and Kings and Johns. You skip past there. You keep going. We get to Duke of Clarence and Edmund Mortimer. You keep going Past there, you go on to another king, Richard Plantagenet. You go to Arthur Plantagenet. Oh, we're getting close now. You go through there. We're still in the 1600s. William Amory. We go past there. It carries on through the Chilcots to John Emery. And now we are nearly there. You go through to the Perrys, and we get to Sarah Perry, who is the mother of Isaac Roberts, is somehow in line to the throne, which is terrifying. So we reckon if we can just kill like 10,000 people, then Isaac could be king. Now, one of them would have to be his mum. And so I've met Sarah Roberts is lovely. We can't take her down. And so he reckons she would abdicate, though, in fairness. But he accepts that we would have to kill his older brothers. And so Isaac is in line to the throne. Most of us are not in line to the throne. I understand that is the deal. But we're going to see this. And Solomon is worried about who's going to take over from him. So in Ecclesiastes 2, he's saying, I hated life because all the work that's done under the sun was grievous to me. All of it is meaningless. I hated the chasing after the wind. I hated all the things I toiled for under the sun because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows if that person is going to be wise or foolish, and yet they will have control over all the fruit of my toil, which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. And this too is meaningless. And so Solomon's thinking, well, what if the guy after me is not good, right? What if I'm the wisest king ever and the guy after me is not good enough? And I used to really depressed reading Kings because you'd see some of the greatest people out there, like Josiah, who Andy's going to preach on in a few weeks, is like my favorite king. And so at that point you think, oh yeah. And then you see his son, and his son's an absolute wrong-un. And his son just goes worse and worse than anyone before. And you're like, oh, it's so depressing, God. And actually, Solomon was in the same place. Like, what if I'm good and my son isn't good? And it turns out his son isn't good. And you think, oh, this is so hard. But ultimately, none of us get to choose the race that the people after us run. It's important that we teach those. Obviously, as the youth pastor, it is my responsibility and job to try and teach and pray for these young people. But they have to make that decision themselves. They just have to make those steps themselves, because my parents could have done any good or bad job, and that would have had a big influence on my life. In some ways, I am like my parents in many things. But there are parts of me that I see that only exist because I became a Christian when I was 15, and God changed things. And there are parts that only have come when I stepped outside of that line and became a Christian, and that started to change my life. And so Solomon takes his eye off the ball to the point where it's like, what if the person after me is not very good? Well, we'll see that the kingdom falls apart not because the person after him is not very good. In 1 Kings 11, this is the end of Solomon's story. It says he had 700 wives of royal birth, 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. He followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely as David, his father, had done. And then it goes on to a couple of other verses. And then it says, the Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who'd appeared to him twice. Although he'd forbidden Solomon to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's command. So the Lord said to Solomon, since this is your attitude, and you've not kept my covenant and my decrees, which I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. Nevertheless, for the sake of David your father, I will not do it during your lifetime. I will tear it out the hand of your son. I will not tear the whole kingdom from him, but I'll give him one tribe for the sake of David my servant and the sake of Jerusalem. And so we're going to go in, as we go into next week, we're going to see that after this point, the kingdom splits into two. And it splits into two, not because the person that comes after Solomon was bad. It splits in because of what Solomon was doing. Okay, and he loses it, even though he was the greatest, the wisest, the richest, and so on. He loses it. And he loses it because when you are the king and you take your eyes off God, we're in trouble. Right? And that becomes a problem. This is Frogmore House. We were in Windsor. This is where Harry and Meghan, in theory, lived. And in couple of months ago, they made the announcement that they were just going to walk their own way. And they have to walk their own path. And it was controversial and it was difficult. Do you know what? We all have to do that. Like, we can't all be Isaacs born into royalty, just waiting for 10,000 people to die. We all have that walk to live. You know what? They have to walk their own path. And yes, they might have a bit more money and so on. But ultimately, that is something that we need to realize, that just because our parents are good doesn't mean we were good. Just because our parents might have had, I am from like the Christian mafia, my mom, my granddad, and so on and so on. Just everyone. But you know what? That does not mean that everyone in my family is following God. It doesn't, because there are people that have made decisions that are different to that. And that is difficult. But ultimately, that is the decision that each of us will have to come and will have to make. And so Solomon was worrying about his legacy. And I wrestled for a little while of whether Solomon's a good or a bad king. Like, is he good? Is he bad? Because it's quite easy to read the book of Kings and you can quite draw a line like, here's your good kings and here's your bad kings. And your good kings, you look at them and think, right, I'll do what they did. And I'll look at the bad kings and I go, I won't do what they did. But Solomon's a problem, like, because he does a load of good stuff. He does a load of bad stuff. He's like, he builds the temple and he's the first guy to do that. He has great wisdom to judge with his people. He has a load of wealth and the country's doing well. But he also has slaves. He also has slaves labor that he's not supposed to have. He also ends up splitting the kingdom. So you think, oh, but is he good? Is he bad? And I really felt challenged this week. Like, God was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, what does it matter to put him in a good column or a bad column? That's not how it works. It's not how my life's going to work. It's not like one day I can just go, I'm hoping that the total of my good stuff outweighs the total of my bad stuff. It only matters when I say, hey, like when I get to the end of my life, I'm going to say, Jesus, I tried to follow you, and I knew you, and I had you in my life. And the whole point about the Kings series is, as we said right at the start of that video, God never wanted him to have a king. He just didn't want him. He said, this is going to happen to you. He said, look, I am your king. I need you to trust me. And that is what we're just going to finish with, just looking at this real king. And there's a king that comes, and he's different to Solomon in every way. And we talked about the fact that it was always meant to be God. And Solomon, he built alliances that were strategic. Some of the wives that he married for political reasons, to build relationships with the nations around him. That's sensible. It's clever, right? Well, Jesus, when he comes, this ultimate king, this forever king who's going to come, what does he do in his last week? He spends it in the house of lepers. He spends it with people who nobody else would kick around with. That's not strategic. That's not tactical. He spends it with people who matter, not to show us how to do it tactically, to show us that people matter, that actually power isn't what we think it is, that we don't live our lives with a cynical struggle for power, but we live our lives saying, hey, love people. And that not the people who will give you something, but the people who matter. The church, when Jesus rose from the dead, first person to see him, Mary Magdalene. For a while, the church was this one woman with a slightly sketchy reputation. And that was the church. Jesus isn't doing it tactically. He's doing it with the people whose hearts are towards him. And so Jesus comes, and he's not bothered by Solomon's tactics and things like this. And he's not bothered by restoring power in the same way. He's not looking back to the old days of Solomon of like, I'm going to come and I'm going to make Israel rich. And I'm going to make you political again. And the people want him to overthrow the Romans. And he's not going to do it, because then that's not how the kingdom's going to work. It's going to work from the bottom up with ordinary people who change the world by trusting me and living for me. And Jesus hasn't come as a kingdom to overthrow our political system. Some of us would quite like the political system to give us some power back. And you know what? I just don't see it in the New Testament. I don't see that's what Jesus did. Don't see what he came for. We might actually get less and less power. But you know what? The church has always thrived when it's being persecuted. And that means if it's difficult for us, then it has to be difficult for us. And we have to know who we stand on, even if the decisions that are made up high are not the ones that we want. Well, it does not change who we regard as our king. It does not change the person who has the right over our life. And Jesus didn't get paraded like Solomon through with robes and crowns about a victor. Jesus, the only time he's paraded through the streets, he's carrying a cross, he's whipped, and he's naked. And what happens is they put a crown on him, but it's a crown of mocking, it's a crown of thorns. And that's the kind of king we have, a king who's saying, hey, don't you worry about might and victory and power the way you think about it. But there is a different love. And we get to be part of that king, because Romans 8 tells us this. It says, for those who are led by the Spirit of God are the children of God. The Spirit you received did not make you slaves so that you live in fear again. Rather, the Spirit you received brought your adoption to sonship. And by him we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself testifies with our spirit that we are God's children. Now, if we are children, then we are heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ, if indeed we share in his sufferings, in order that we may also share in his glory. You know, and that's the deal. We might not have born royal. We might have had loads of disadvantages in life. The system may not be stacked in our favor. We can't all be Isaac Roberts with our royal bloodline. But you know what? We are adopted into a greater family. And you know what? That's going to mean we live different. We look different. We don't look the same as the kingdoms of this world. And my prayer for us as a church at Latchford is we would be able to live that out because of what God does in our lives. And so, God, I just thank you that you would bring us in, that we do not deserve anything. We do not deserve to be part of that you didn't bring us in for our own goodness, but you brought us in because you are a kingdom, you are a king like no other, and your kingdom is like nothing we see in this world. God, I pray that you would just help us to see you more, to understand it more, and that you would invade our lives, that we would live out as citizens of that kingdom in this broken and different world. Help us with that, we pray, Lord. Amen. Okay, I'm getting a sign that I'm supposed to finish. So that is, we are finishing. And so if you want to stay around and pray, there'll be a few of us to pray, but there's tea and coffee in the room just opposite. By all means, go and speak to some people. That'd be great.